Hi everybody. Now a few months ago I did a blog about the national beehive, which is possibly the most common type of beehive in this country and is one of the what I call box hives. And in the blog I think I mentioned some of the predecessors to the box hives, one of which was the skep. Now the word skep is a Nordic word meaning basket, and they were used initially for measuring grain and wheat, that sort of thing, but became used for keeping bees. And they are fairly sort of simple things really. It is a rope made out of straw or grass, which is then wrapped around to make a bucket or a skep. And these things were used quite widely across Europe, and however the introduction of box hives made them less popular, and these days they aren't used for beekeeping really hardly at all, other than for collecting swarms. And I've got one here. This is my skep, and as you can see, it's just basically a bucket. And these things are very useful for collecting swarms because you can just knock the bees into here. Now, as far as beekeeping is concerned, they are, as I said, pretty much unused these days. There are problems with them, not least the fact of getting the honey out. They haven't got, these things haven't got any easy way of getting honey out of it. But there again, these things weren't really designed for commercial honey production. I think families had one or two of these things, and if they needed honey, they would just cut a chunk of the comb out of these things and then let it recover. Anyway, so the things aren't widely used very much, but as I said, I do use one for swarms, and I have a sort of passing interest in different types of beehive. And as you both should know by now, I have my top bar hive and also my Warre hive, and I was thinking towards the end of last year of what sort of project thing that I might do this year, and I thought I'll do a skep. I'll get a skep. Now you can buy skeps, obviously you can buy these sort of things. These are just cheap things you get off Amazon, but I thought it'd be quite a nice idea if I could get or make a more traditional style of skep. Now the craft of making skeps is dying and is on the red list of crafts, which means that very few people actually do it these days. I think there's only 10 or so people on the list in this country. There is a chap who champions skeps, a guy called Chris Park, and he runs courses on how to make them, which look great, but they're down in the West Country and I'm just too old for all of that. So what I did was I tried to find somebody who would make one for me. So I hunted around and finally found Tina, also 10 in the West Country, who makes these things and other wonderful things, and there'll be a link to her website in the description of this blog. And so I contacted her and asked her if she would make one for me, and she said she would. So she started on it, handmade. Obviously it takes a while to make these things, and then eventually this parcel arrived. Okay, let's see what we've got. Whoops. It's the biggest Christmas present I've ever had. Blimey. There we go. Ooh. Wow. Wow. How about that? Let's get the box out of the way. That's a bit of a beast. I have to say that's a bit bigger than I expected it to be, but that's good. I think, as I said earlier in the blog, this is made with a very sort of traditional sort of pattern, and it's got a mid-entrance here. Some skeps have a sort of, well, you just let them in from the bottom there, but when I was looking at some of the videos about these things, particularly in Germany, they seem to be mid-entrance. I'm sure the bees don't care. Anyway, that's a bit impressive, isn't it? So next thing to do, I've got to move it over to its new location and set it up there. As for siting the skep, I think I would want it here in Ravensden. In one corner of the apiary I have my two hippie hives, I suppose. There's the top Bar Hive, and down here is the Warre hive, and behind the Warre hive there's a little space here, and looking up there's an easy escape for them, and yeah, I think there's enough room here. I don't need to do too much clearing, maybe just some of the branches up there, but this could well be the place where the skep's going to go. One of the issues about using a skep is that the comb that the bees build is attached at the top of the skep up here, and it sort of works its way downwards. Now this means that the sheets of comb aren't as secure perhaps as they could be in a conventional hive, where you have a wooden frame and there's wire going through the sheets of wax to keep it secure. And what that means is that if you lift a skep up and perhaps tilt it to look underneath it to see how things are going, the sheets of comb can collapse. So to prevent that, what you can do is to put wooden skewers through the skep, and as the wax builds downwards, it attaches itself to these wooden skewers to give it a bit more strength. So what I've got to do firstly is to cut some skewers. I'm just going to use little bits of dowling to go through the hive. These are then sharpened just to make it easier to go through the skep, and then where they cross, I'm just going to tie them with little bits of string just to give them a little bit of extra strength. One of the issues about skeps is that because they're made out of straw, they're not particularly durable or weatherproof, certainly not compared with the solid wooden frames, hives rather, that we use now, like the Nationals. So in the past, what was often done with these things is that they were covered or coated in a mixture of wood ash, burnt wood ash, mud and cow dung, and it was called Klume. Now I've been unable to find Klume in Tesco's or Sainsbury's, so what I'm going to do is something just a little bit different. Now, in the past, when skeps were used for pollinating apples and that sort of thing, quite often in this country you can see old orchards, walled orchards, and they would have little alcoves set into the walls, and these were where the skeps were put. So in pollination time, the skeps will be brought in, put into these little alcoves and left there, and they had some protection from the weather, and then once the season was over, they were taken back to where they came from. Now, if you were doing this out on the moors, say, what you would find is rows of these skep houses, which were pretty much the same thing, just little alcoves where the skeps were kept. Now, what I'm going to do is, well, pretty much the same thing. The bumble here is fairly secluded, so there's not a lot of sort of lateral wind that you have to suffer, but obviously it can get wet. So what I've done is I've made this, and this is just using a standard table that I would put any of the other hives on, but put a sort of a roof on it, which is made out of larch lap, is it, feather lap? And so it's at a slight angle, so if it rains, or when it rains rather, the rain will run away. So that will keep it away from the worst of the weather. The only thing really on top of that is in the winter when it gets cold, they aren't perhaps as good insulation as a conventional wooden hive is. So what I intend to do is to make some sheets of kingspan, the insulation material, and put it around it and on top of it to keep it warm. So this is the skep that was in Martin's garden. Unfortunately I didn't have a camera ready with me rather when I collected it, but it was up there, just on those branches there, and a fair size. So I'm just going to wrap it up and take it to Ravensden and then deal with it tomorrow. So there's the swarm inside the skep that I picked up last night, and it's going to go over here, obviously into the bowl, and the new skep it's going to go into is down there. So in theory it's a fairly simple job. I just need to put that thing over here upside down and then just pour all the bees in here. Okay, here's the swarm. I'm just going to turn it over, hopefully very gently. I can hear them in there. Whoops. And there are a few bees caught up inside the sheets from last night. There we go. There we go. So there's a lot of bees in here. Well, there's also a lot of foliage in here as well from the branches that got cut last night, so I want to try and get those out if I can. And here we go. Okay. That's that all out of the way. I'll just show you what it looks like inside. Where are we? There we are. Yep. Little block in there from last night. So that's a fair size. And all I've got to do now is get them into the skep. Okay, so hopefully most of them will go down. Yeah. Yep, all gone. That's good. And just to show how busy these things can be, I'll bring this up closer. There's a little bit of beautiful white comb that they've built even since last night. So that's good, that's nice. Now all I need to do is just turn this over. But what I want to do as well is this has got a mid-entrance where the bees will want to get in there as quick as they can. So I'm going to prop the entrance up. Hope they don't fall out. In fact, what I might do is I might just, over we go. Now there's a couple even going in and out already, but I'm going to prop this up at the bottom here just to give them a bit of extra space to get back in there. And well, that's it for the time being. I'm not going to inspect this thing very often, but I will check it in a week or so, just hopefully to make sure that everything's okay. So there we are, bees in a skep. Now the bees have been in the skep now for probably about 3 weeks, and they're doing very well. They're very vigorous. There's lots of activity, lots of coming and going, as you can see from this clip. Now, I think I said earlier in the blog that I wouldn't be treating this in the same way as the other national hives, in that I won't be doing regular inspections on it. But like the Warre hive and the top bar hive, I'll be leaving them alone, and if they need anything, then we can sort some things out. But I must admit, I was very curious to know what was going on inside the thing. Now, we've had 3 groups of people come up to see the bees in the last couple of weeks. Sharon came up when the bees had pretty much only just been in there, so I wasn't too worried about the comb that might have built up being a bit wobbly and breaking. But I held the thing up, and Sharon sort of squatted down, almost laid down underneath it and looked up, and she said it looked fine. Sarah and Sue came along a week or so ago, and I did the same thing, and they were both very impressed with what was going on in there, and apparently the comb was building up very well. And Chris came up last week, and he had a look as well, and apparently the comb had started to build its way down the skep and had started to lock into the little skewer things that I'd put in, which are called spleets apparently. So I thought, what I'll do is I would try and make a little clip of what was going on in there. So I'm going to get Sue to come out with me. I'm going to hold the skep up, and Sue's going to try and video what's going on underneath. So let's see what we found. Okay, let's see what we can see. I'm a bit nervous of doing this in case all the comb collapses, but we'll just have to see how it goes, and I'll see if I can get it right up to the camera. Blimey, look at that. That's amazing. Wow. and it's very, very heavy indeed. So let's put it back and I'll leave them alone. Well, that wasn't too bad, was it? Quite impressive, really. I'm pleased that it seems to be going very well. So I think now I can pretty much leave the bees alone, let them get on with things, just keep an eye on them to see if anything's happening that I need to do something about, but we can just leave them alone. Okay, well, thanks for watching.